Imagine the man you love, the one you're building a future with, is the same person secretly destroying it. You think you're failing, that your body is betraying you in the most painful way possible. But the truth is a poison served with a kiss, a betrayal so deep it shatters not just your heart, but your very reality. This wasn't a tragedy, it was a meticulously planned crime. The world tilted on its axis the moment my husband's best friend, Zane, walked out of our guest bathroom. He wasn't holding a hand towel or an empty roll of toilet paper. In his hand was a small, orange prescription bottle, and his face was a mask of confusion. "I thought you two were trying for a baby," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of my laptop where I was, ironically, scrolling through the websites of IVF clinics. Beside me, my husband, Jasper, went rigid, his hand hovering over his morning coffee. "We are, Zane." "What's that?" I asked, a nervous laugh bubbling in my throat. Zane held the bottle up for us to see. "Then why is there a bottle of mifepristone in your medicine cabinet?" "This is used to terminate pregnancies." The air crackled with a sudden, suffocating tension. "That's not mine," I said, turning to Jasper, my heart starting to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "I would never." "Is it yours?" The silence that followed was a physical thing, pressing down on me. Zane's eyes darted between us, a horrifying understanding slowly dawning on his face. "There are only two people living in this house," I whispered, as Zane's gaze dropped to the label. "Filled last month, and the month before that." My stomach plummeted. The dates swam before my eyes, aligning with a sickening precision. "My miscarriages." The words were a ghost of a sound. I had suffered 4 miscarriages in just under 2 years. My legs trembled as I pushed myself to my feet. The room felt like it was closing in. "You've been poisoning me? You've been killing our babies?" Jasper stumbled back, his face ashen, leaning against the kitchen counter for support. "It's not what you think," he stammered. "Then explain it." My voice climbed, fueled by a rising tide of hysteria. "Explain why there is abortion medication in our home while I'm injecting myself with hormones and taking every fertility supplement known to man. While I've been blaming myself, hating my own body for what I thought were its failures, you are the one causing them." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and monstrous. "You murdered our children." The words felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside out. "Your mother called me defective at Thanksgiving. She asked if we should explore other options. Your sister announced her 3rd pregnancy at Christmas, and the entire family looked at me with pity." The memories, once just painful, were now laced with a new, venomous understanding. I gave up a promotion to minimize stress. I quit coffee, wine, sushi, even my anxiety medication, all to increase our chances. Jasper opened his mouth, a desperate look in his eyes. "The doctor said stress could be a factor." "Don't you dare." I cut him off, my voice sharp as glass. "Don't you dare use the doctor's words against me now. I endured 3 rounds of Clomid that left me too sick to function. They forced dye through my fallopian tubes, Jasper. Do you have any idea how excruciating that is? While you were secretly feeding me poison, I was allowing doctors to subject me to torture, all to find out why I couldn't carry our babies to term." The tears that had been threatening finally broke free, streaming down my face. "We named them, Jasper. We picked out their names together. Phoenix, Saja, Indigo, Xavier. I was knitting blankets for them, imagining them wrapped snugly in my arms, while you were ensuring they would never draw a single breath." His hands were shaking, reaching for me as if he was the one in need of comfort. Suddenly, Zane, who had been a statue of disbelief, spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Jasper, is this about Sloane?" Jasper's face went from gray to stark white. "Who is Sloane?" I demanded. "She's no one," Jasper said quickly. "Just a colleague from work." "I saw you with her," Zane interrupted, his voice gaining strength. "Leaving the office late one night last month. It looked like more than a work project. Her hand was on the back of your neck." Jasper began to tremble visibly. "You told me it was a work thing. I believed you. I never thought my best friend would be a cheater, but the way you're reacting right now, My hand shot out and snatched Jasper's phone from the counter. If she's nobody, you won't mind if I take a look. His conversation with Sloane was the first one on the screen. It was filled with heart and kiss emojis. Can't wait until you're finally free, one message read. My hands shook as I scrolled up. Did the insurance pay out yet? My blood ran cold. Insurance? I kept reading. $8,000 this time. Same as the last three. Perfect. Almost enough for the lawyer and the apartment deposit. One more should do it. She wants to try again next month. Perfect timing. My voice broke as I read the next message aloud, the words tasting like acid in my mouth. Making her dead babies pay for our future. Jasper's legs gave out, and he gripped the counter to keep from collapsing. You were collecting insurance money on our dead children? I could barely form the words. Pregnancy loss insurance from your job. I didn't even know that was a thing. $8,000 per miscarriage. That's $32,000. Every swipe of my thumb revealed a deeper layer of his depravity. He had texted her from the hospital, while I was in the throes of losing Indigo. One more after this and we're free, he had written. He had held my hand, whispering words of comfort through my contractions, all while plotting the murder of our next child. I never wanted to hurt you like this, he began, but I cut him off with a scream. You didn't mean to hurt me? The pieces were slamming into place with brutal clarity. The pregnancy tests, you always bought them. You insisted on being there when I took them. You had to know the exact moment I conceived, so you could start the poison. You orchestrated the timeline of each of their deaths to make it look like a tragic pattern, never a crime. I hurled his phone at him. You let me believe I was broken. You let your mother suggest you deserved a real woman. You even agreed with her, then played the part of the noble, loving husband who would stand by me anyway. You were doing me a favor? Zane was already on the phone, his voice urgent as he gave our address to the 911 operator. Please, Jasper begged, reaching for me again. Let me explain. Explain what? How you murdered our children for money. How you poisoned me to pay for your girlfriend. I scrambled away from his touch. I drained our savings for fertility treatments while you were cashing in on death benefits. For 7 years, I loved you. Every single night, I prayed for a baby. Every morning, I gave myself injections that made me gain 30 pounds. And you told me I was becoming less attractive. All while you were poisoning me to run away with another woman. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. It seemed that even he, a master of deceit, couldn't conjure a lie big enough to cover this. In the distance, the faint wail of sirens grew steadily louder. Phoenix would have been 2 years old now, I said, my voice dropping to a devastated whisper. Sage would be learning to walk. Indigo would be 3 months old. But to you, they were just paychecks. $8,000 apiece. The sirens were close now. They're coming for you, I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. I hoped she was worth it. In a flash of panic, Jasper's eyes darted towards the back of the house, and he bolted, running out the back door. Zane wrapped his arms around me as I finally dissolved into gut-wrenching sobs. The front door burst open, and 3 police officers entered, their hands resting on their holsters. Zane let go of me, and I pointed a trembling finger towards the still-swinging back door. 2 officers sprinted through the kitchen in pursuit, while the 3rd remained with us. My body was shaking so violently, I felt like I was going to come apart. The officer tried to ask me what happened, but I couldn't form a coherent sentence. I just kept pointing at the orange prescription bottle on the counter, my sobs choking me. Zane picked up Jasper's phone from the floor and handed it to the officer. The screen was still lit up with those monstrous texts about their future being funded by my dead babies. The officer's expression shifted from confusion to utter horror as he read. He immediately got on his radio, calling for evidence bags and a crime scene unit. More sirens filled the air, and soon, paramedics were walking through the door. They took one look at my state and began checking my vital signs. My blood pressure was dangerously high, my pulse racing. They insisted I go to the emergency room, explaining that being repeatedly poisoned for nearly 2 years could have caused untold internal damage.
Zane said he would drive me.
Outside, our street was a sea of flashing red and blue lights. Neighbors were gathered on their lawns, their faces etched with concern and curiosity. I saw Mrs. Henderson from next door, her hand clasped over her mouth in shock. At the hospital, the triage nurse's eyes widened as Zane explained the situation. I was rushed back to a room immediately. A doctor came in, her face compassionate but serious. I recounted the entire nightmarish story, from the 4 miscarriages to the discovery of the pills and the texts. She ordered a battery of tests: blood work, urine samples, liver function tests, and an ultrasound to check for organ damage. A nurse took what felt like a gallon of my blood. Another came to photograph my body for evidence: my face, the old 4 marks on my arms, my still swollen belly from the fertility drugs. Hours later, Detective Lionel Mallister arrived. He was a tall man with kind eyes, and he listened patiently as I told him everything from the very beginning. He took copious notes, asked detailed questions, and assured me they were taking this with the utmost seriousness. He explained they had already put out an alert for Jasper's car and had frozen all his bank accounts and credit cards. He won't get far, he promised. After the detective left, a social worker came in. She gently explained the concept of reproductive coercion, classifying it as a severe form of domestic abuse. She helped me fill out the paperwork for an emergency restraining order right there in my hospital bed. She said what Jasper had done was a horrific combination of attempted murder, fraud, and domestic violence. The doctor returned late that night with my initial test results. My liver enzymes were elevated, a clear sign of the poisoning. She said it would take months to know the full extent of the damage to my body. "You are incredibly lucky Zane found that bottle when he did," she said, her voice grave. "Another pregnancy under these circumstances could have been fatal." I was discharged around 10:30 p.m. Zane drove me to his apartment, as our house was now an active crime scene. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and interviews. The police found the prescription bottle and discovered Jasper had been getting refills from 3 different pharmacies under different doctors' names. The insurance company launched its own fraud investigation. My fertility clinic flagged my file and offered their full cooperation with the police. A representative from my employer's insurance company called for a recorded statement, her professional demeanor barely masking her shock. Driven by a morbid need to see the proof for myself, I logged into our online banking. There they were, 4 deposits of $8,000, each one appearing shortly after a miscarriage, and each one immediately transferred to a separate account in Jasper's name only. I took screenshots and sent them to Detective Mallister. Then his mother called. She didn't even say hello before she started screaming, accusing me of being a hysterical liar who was ruining her son's life. I recorded the entire tirade and sent that to the detective as well, then blocked her number and the numbers of his entire family. A few days later, an email from an unfamiliar address appeared in my inbox. It was Jasper, begging me to call off the police, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. He had the audacity to suggest the medication was to help manage my miscarriages, to spare me the pain of carrying non-viable pregnancies. The lie was so outrageous, so insulting to my intelligence, that it sent me running to the bathroom to be sick. The investigation uncovered more horrors. The forensics team found mifepristone residue in our coffee maker's water reservoir. They tested the stress-reducing vitamin supplements Jasper had been so diligently giving me and found they had been tampered with, the abortion pills crushed and mixed inside. Then came the home security footage. The cloud backup I'd forgotten about showed Jasper, clear as day, on 4 separate occasions, coming home with pharmacy bags just 2 days before each of my miscarriages. The most damning footage was from the kitchen camera, showing him mixing a white powder into my morning smoothie before bringing it to me in bed with a kiss. The district attorney's office began building their case. Sloane, Jasper's girlfriend, was apprehended and, in exchange for a plea deal, she gave the police everything. She provided texts where Jasper referred to our unborn children as financial opportunities. She had recordings of phone calls where he laughed about how I blamed myself for the losses. Her testimony, the prosecutor said, was a nail in his coffin. 2 weeks after he fled, Jasper was pulled over for a broken taillight 3 states away. He was living out of his car, disheveled and weeping when they arrested him. His mother, stone-faced and defiant, paid his $200,000 bail without a second thought, refinancing her house to do so. The divorce proceedings were brutal. His lawyer tried to paint me as mentally unstable, even suggesting I pay him spousal support. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense man named Cyrus McQueen, shut that down immediately. The legal battle dragged on for months. The grand jury indicted Jasper on all charges: assault with poison, insurance fraud, and domestic violence. He was facing up to 20 years in prison. In the end, facing the mountain of evidence against him, he took a plea deal: 5 years, with the possibility of parole in 3. The law, as the prosecutor explained, viewed our unborn children as victims who had never technically drawn breath, a legal distinction that felt like a dagger to my heart. In the courtroom, I read my victim impact statement, my voice shaking but steady. I spoke the names of my 4 children, Phoenix, Sage, Indigo, and Xavier, into the record. I described the nursery I had planned 4 times over, the tiny clothes I still couldn't bring myself to give away. Jasper mumbled a half-hearted apology, but I didn't look at him. His family glared at me from the gallery, their faces contorted with hatred, as if I were the villain in this story. The divorce was finalized, and thanks to a clause in our prenup regarding criminal acts, I got everything: the house, the savings, the retirement accounts. He was left with nothing but his legal fees and his prison sentence. The insurance company also sued him and won, ensuring he would be paying off his debts for the rest of his life. A year has passed since that terrible day. The grief is a constant companion, a weight I've learned to carry. I sold a house, unable to live with the ghosts of what happened there. I volunteer at a domestic violence shelter now, sharing my story of reproductive coercion, a crime more common than most people realize. The panic attacks are less frequent, and I've even been promoted at work. Zane and I are still close. He's a steady, quiet presence in my life, a reminder that not all men are like Jasper. In the backyard of my new, smaller home, I've planted 4 trees: an apple for Phoenix, an oak for Sage, a cherry for Indigo, and a maple for Xavier. I water them every morning. Watching them grow, seeing new life push through the soil, is its own kind of therapy. I survived something that was meant to destroy me. The man who was supposed to be my partner in life tried to poison me, body and soul, but he failed. And some days, that feels like a victory. It's a victory I never wanted, a battle I never should have had to fight, but it's mine. And it's enough.